Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Man Alone Network, your source for everything not the Summer Olympics. I know that the demographics for tabletop role-playing games is basically a flat circle of a Venn diagram with sports watchers, and so thank you for taking a break from archery or arts and crafts or whatever event is going on today in the Summer Olympics to come here and join me about a very serious topic. And that topic is solving a mystery, solving an investigation. And more specifically, I want to talk about mystery role-playing games. And even more specifically, I want to talk about solo mystery role-playing games. And even more specific, I want to talk about, well, I want to ask the question, and this is an age-old question when it comes to solo RPG players. I've been asking this question my whole life. I've been asking this question longer than any other question I've been asking in my life. You know, even the big ones like who shot JFK or why did my parents always close their door on Sundays when I was a kid and then wrestle each other? You know, these are the things that I still don't know. They hang over my head every day, but nothing hangs over my head like the mystery of whether or not it is possible to make a solo mystery RPG. Or better stated, is it possible to make one that is fun, that doesn't suck? Obviously, you don't even have to be very versed in this stuff to know the inherent, sort of epistemological issue here, which is that in order for there to be a mystery, there has to be something that is unknown. And when we are playing group TTRPGs, that is easily accomplished by having a game master who let me adjust this a little bit, who has the solution to the mystery in their head, and the players then have to follow a trail of clues to figure that out with varying levels of success, and I would say, from my own experience, enjoyment. Some games that we call mysteries, I would say, are mysteries in a more broad sense. For instance, Call of Cthulhu, which I have not played, but I've owned for a while, I've read through, and also confirmed by some viewers, some commenters on the page, is that this is more of the grander mystery of the Cthulhu mythos. There could be investigations. It could include, hunting down clues and trying to unlock things, but as far as Lovecraftian, hate that word. As far as like Lovecraftian literature, the bigger mystery is, of course, like the mystery of the universe, our insignificance, and most of Lovecraft's books actually do not. Well, they follow a normal mystery pattern, but it involves an investigator who keeps investigating, people telling them to stop investigating, them saying, no, I want to keep doing it. I have to know the truth. And then they finally open the door to that truth, and their mind cannot fathom it, right? The scale of it, the eldritch scale of it. And so whether or not we would consider that sort of a satisfying conclusion to the mystery or not is up to the interpretation of the reader. And so a lot of mystery RPGs are based around this. Obviously, Tiny Cthulhu is one as well. And this one actually has a sort of clue system where the GM is creating this sort of final confrontation and then creating these clues along the way. And you need a certain amount of clues to bypass from the inciting incident to the first level of clues to the second to the third. You can go up either of these branches to get to the final confrontation. I would say that this is a pretty common setup in mystery RPGs writ large, and I would say that it is mystery in form, in aesthetic, but functionally, games like this are scavenger hunts. Clues in this situation are nothing more than collecting medallions, tokens, trophies, the Triforce, trying to put them all together, and then at the end, having a sort of final confrontation or a discovery solution to the crime. There are I think valiant efforts of creating a more traditional investigation sort of setup where the player has to track down clues, and the game master is intentionally creating a trail of clues to lead them to the final reveal. I think Vazen does, I would say, about as good a job as you can do in advising the game master of how to set up a mystery, to actually talk about the architecture of a mystery, to talk about how to create a sense of urgency, how to leave primary or central clues and peripheral clues, clues about the context, setting up alternate clue locations so that if the player misses one, they don't have to just get kind of stonewalled where they are and not be able to move on. How to structure the mystery, how to entice the players. There's a really good, actually, let me find some table in here that does a really good job of advising the game master on like general strategies to make a mystery and a horror more, I guess you could say, titillating to the reader. And of course, I can't find it right now. It's somewhere on here. But it has things like, make the mystery personal. Oh, here we go. Advice for the game master. No friends, no escape routes. Create like a horror atmosphere. Slowly turn up the heat. Strange people and places. Help the players create images. Make it personal. And then also like a basic schematic of how this works. Now, if you're a GM that has tried to run a mystery campaign, you know that your success may vary. And I guess I want to press pause right there before we even get into solo play to say, what is success in terms of a mystery? And it doesn't even have to be a mystery game, just a mystery in general. And I've actually done quite a bit of thinking about this. And actually, I tried what's that hobby? Reading. I tried reading about it. And I have some interesting thoughts about it. I hope they're interesting. Because I think in order to understand like what the measurement of success is, we should sort of reverse engineer. We should see what makes that satisfying outcome and how can we build up to that, in the same way that the mystery, the central mystery in some of these games is usually reverse engineered by the GM, right? The GM will start with the outcome and then work their way back with clues so that they can, build up, the players can build up the scaffolding to the final outcome. And so let's talk about why. And this is a very remedial question here, so please just be patient. And I know if you're a subscriber to this channel, you already are very patient. But let's just talk about why do people like mysteries? It's one of those questions that I think there's a couple obvious answers that come to mind. Some of the justifications for it are a bit circuitous. And I would also like to point out that a lot of mystery games here are horror mystery. Obviously, mystery will often include some element of either horror or crime, or at least something that is not the norm, right? It is something has gone wrong, because that is the sort of hook in any sort of mystery. There's not many mystery movies that start out with someone has baked me a cake. Who could it be? At least there's probably a few of those on Lifetime and Oxygen, but otherwise I think that most mysteries are like, who baked, my uncle into the cake. So the first thing is what attracts us to a mystery. And this is the question, the fundamental question that I really wanted to think about on my own before I looked up anything, before I looked up any information on the writing of mysteries, the psychology behind them. And for me, oddly, I found a parallel between mystery and comedy. And the parallel that I found, and by the way, I was waiting for sounds outside of my home to stop. There was some sirens and stuff, and then they stopped. And then a storm started, and I almost threw my arms up and said, "What the hell? And now I can't record." And then I was like, "Are you kidding me? This is a dark, stormy night, right? It's perfect for mystery." So, this parallel between comedy and horror or mystery is a tension and then release, right? That is the actual structure of a joke. The earliest joke being peekaboo. And peekaboo involves the basic structure of a joke. That's why babies laugh at it, is you create tension, right? They don't have object permanence. So when you cover your face, babies literally think you have, fallen into the endless velvety black nothingness. And then when you remove your hands, you are there once again. The delight of the release of that mystery, the delight is so much that they're overcome with happiness to see you again after that moment of indecision, that it is enjoyable, right? And extend that out to a stand-up comic, for example, right? They tell a story. Usually these stories that they tell involve something that could go poorly, right? They involve setting up a scenario in which you almost go, "Oh no, this sounds really bad. There's no possible way this could be resolved in a fun way." And then the way that it is resolved is, in the end, all right. And so you feel this relief, okay? And I would say that this is this I'm going to call, one second, someone at my door. I'm going to call this phenomenon the necktie phenomenon. And as I started thinking about this, like a necktie, the purpose of it is one of the greatest mysteries of all time, but mostly the purpose of a necktie is to feel good when you take it off, when you loosen it, right? And as I started thinking about this tension and release is actually present in tons of genres. Romance, right? This feeling of like, will they, won't they? Oh, there's all these things that they're made for each other, but there's all of these factors that are pulling them apart. And now one of them is arriving at the airport just as the other one is leaving, right? And there's this tension. And then finally there is this, hopefully some sort of catharsis or release when, despite all, things against the odds, they somehow prevail. I think this is a salient reason why many of Shakespeare's plays that weren't tragedies end in a marriage, right? There is this, there has to be this release because there's so much tension, there's so much, a comedy of errors that occurs. And then in order for there to be catharsis at the end, there has to be the joyous union of these people, right? That tension is released and we have to celebrate that tension. And that's what causes us this satisfaction, this enjoyment, right? And then, of course, thrillers falls neatly into that. Obviously, you can think of the greatest thriller of all time being Taken by Liam Neeson. What a claim that is. Well, it's like, is he going to be able to find his daughter? Does he have a special set of skills? And then finally, instead of a wedding, there's a huge canon of ass whooping that is released at the end, which is very cathartic. Okay. So what I'm getting at here is that what I believe is a sort of non-negotiable prerequisite for a mystery to function well and be satisfying is there has to be the tension of the approach, there has to be crossing of the threshold, and there has to be the release of discovery, okay? I think a really good example of this, and I did see these, and I could for the life of me not figure out who the photographer was, and it took an impossible string of Boolean searches for about an hour to dig this up. But this series of photos by Holly Andres called Sparrow Lane, and I think it captures so well the thrill of the approach or the tension, right? That sort of moment before bypassing that threshold into the world of unknown to see what is there. I mean, just looking at this picture right now, it's maybe friends or sisters, and right, they really shouldn't be going into their parents' room and their parents aren't home, but they found the key and they're about to do it, and and then, what are they going to find in there? Probably dad's stinky socks, right? But the thrill of that, of sort of trespassing against that, doing the wrong thing, creates the tension, and then the release will follow in whatever way it might follow here. And I think as well, there has to be that setup, that tension, and then there has to be that passing through to the threshold where you're now part of the world. And in a lot of Cthulhu books, there is a rule set that is like, you can't, I think they have it here in Tiny Cthulhu, but there's like these general rules of setting up any sort of Lovecraft type environment. I can't find exactly what it is, but it's basically like you can't win and you can't leave, right? Like you can't overcome these Lovecraftian horrors and you can't get away from them. And I think once you cross the threshold, whether the character knows it or not, they're entering an environment that they simply can't just say, oh, well, I'm just going to go home. I mean, they could, right? But that would not make for a very interesting setup. And so that's tension and release. Absolutely. The second thing I would say, and I was being kind of trying to be brutally honest with myself, is I think there is an element in which we like to test our own deduction skills. We, like everybody, you, the viewer, me, the viewee, the viewess, is thinks that they are uniquely intelligent, that if only everyone thought like me, the world would be such a better place. Everyone would be making YouTube videos, and everyone would be enjoying themselves just talking about solo roleplay. If you just agreed with what I said, we should probably talk about that at some point, but you sound like somebody who might be interested in subscribing to my podcast. So if you go to this link, buymeacoffee.com/manalone, we already have over 50 subscribers. It's only $4 a month. And it's a weekly podcast that gets put out every weekend. We're already on episode 4, going to release this weekend. And it's your boy Man Alone. His betrothed, his beloved BB is there in the mix. His boy, Mr. 55, is there. And we talk solo gaming, tabletop gaming, video gaming, but we also talk things like movies and absolute nonsense. So if you're enjoying the waffling, if you're enjoying the tension of the me not getting to the point of this video right now, you sound like a perfect candidate to join the revolution. We're going to revolutionize the way that people sit around. Anyways, okay, so if you're not someone who agrees with that, right? You probably are like everyone else, and you're thinking you have this solipsism, right? I'm the smartest, and so if you're like that, you're probably looking at mysteries, trying to sort of suss out what's going on here, trying to be a step ahead of the mystery, which I guess is in a way a step ahead of the writers, and audiences have gotten increasingly savvy over the years. I would say that a couple like touchstones, The Sixth Sense, Fight Club, The Machinist, movies like this that, we can only, it's sort of like a fool me once kind of thing. And so audiences now are trying to figure out, like, what's the twist? What's the rug that's going to be pulled out from under me? And they're very savvy. And so sometimes mysteries don't even try to misdirect the viewer. They just try to, like, do the mystery well, even though people are they assume, figure it out in advance, which I think is kind of sad. But there's something to that, a serialized sort of mystery. But the goal of a good mystery is to really lead someone in one direction and then have them surprised by the outcome. And so that gives us an opportunity to be armchair detectives, to wonder, hey, if I was on this case, would I be able to solve this? Now we get into a little more of stuff that just doing a bit of research on this from both a literary and psychological perspective. So another reason that we like mysteries, or what makes good mystery, is crime, taboo, horror. And if we compare this to like a roller coaster, mysteries. Ooh, that's a big thunder. Oh, wow. I hope you're really able to hear that, because that's going to make a great sound effect. But knowing, because I have a $43 microphone, it might have just sounded like junk. Anyways, mysteries are going to deal with subjects that we do not normally encounter. And it's going to create a sort of hyper reality, at least a heightened reality. Like a roller coaster, there is this feeling of danger and uncertainty, even though there is also this feeling of like safety and certainty. But you suspend your disbelief, you enter into this place, and you get to rehearse or imagine that you're experiencing that kind of danger in a way that you are not actually exposed to that. And if you are a true crime addict, or you live with one, not saying I do, you'll know that there is plenty of psychology to try to discern why people are interested in that sort of a thing. To put that aside for a second and just talk about what a mystery does to us as a viewer, because we're following along, because we're trying to carry out this deduction and using the investigator, or the everyman, or whoever it is investigating this, we want to stand in for them. And we want to, in order to do this, it sort of urges us into a more close intimacy of the character. Like, we know, we pay attention more than we normally would, right? I have found, to my great shame, even after I've eliminated all social media from my phone, I still am so dopaminergically damaged from years of social media that I have a really hard time sitting through a movie. And this makes me so sad, because I used to watch like a movie every night, and now I can barely make it through a half hour without checking something. But with a mystery, we don't want to miss something that could, hold promise as being part of the solution. And if it's a mystery that's worth its weight in salt, in gold, I don't know, worth its salt, it's going to show you the solution. It's going to have the guts to show you the solution, rather than at the end of the movie saying, aha, it was none of these things. It was actually the twin. If you've ever seen The Prestige, I think that's one of the few, it's a Christopher Nolan magician movie. Came out around the same time as The Illusionist with Edward Norton, but this one had Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman, and it pulled off a very overused trope very well, as sort of like it was, I guess, spoilers if you haven't seen this movie that's 12 years old. It was Christian Bale's twin. There's actually twin brothers, right? And so, but usually things like that feel like a cheat, right? If there is some deus ex machina, something that was happening in the background, something that the viewer had no chance of accessing, no chance of catching beforehand, they're going to feel quite cheated. Excuse me. Okay. So it's going to draw us in closer into the study of the character, and those are I wouldn't call them surface level things, but I would call them sort of our instinctual draw to a mystery. And I would say the most basic atavistic draw that we have is the essential fact that humans are very intrigued by a gap in information. And I think from an evolutionary standpoint, gaps in information, we are naturally incentivized, urged. It benefits us to be curious about that, right? If we were sitting there 10,000 years ago and all of a sudden we got back to our camp and we saw some paw prints we didn't recognize, it's very unlikely that this senior citizen, Cro-Magnon, who's probably 28 in his golden years, would have said, "Oh, wow, some paw prints. Well, I'm just going to go to sleep," right? You're going to want to find out, what were those paw prints? Are they still a threat to me? Is it an opportunity for food? Is it someone playing a trick on me? Whatever that might be. Okay. And so there is this instinctual desire. And there's also the fact that our, ability to conceptualize, induction, deduction, all of these uniquely human skills are put to good use in a mystery because, as is often said, humans are meaning-making machines. We are pattern recognition machines. I want to tell you a little story that I think hilariously exemplifies this. Okay, so I had a period of my life about maybe 4 or 5 years ago where I was kind of having a crisis of faith, right? Like a lot of people that grew up very Catholic, I moved away from that because Catholicism to me had nothing to do with religion. It had, it was more about, I went to Catholic school and it was like rules and limitations and all that stuff. And I wanted to be cool and I wanted to, smoke cigs and I wanted to have all sorts of fun. And so I created this, these justifications, these rationalizations to reject the cosmology of it so that I can go have my non-Amish Rumspringa. And probably also like many of you, I went through this whole Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens sort of arrogance about faith. And then I had some experiences which led me back to having a very, we'll call it a syncretic faith life, in that I just have these sort of undeniably transcendent divine experiences. And I also was seeking to deepen that, to cultivate that. And so I started looking all over for a religion. If you're born Catholic in the U.S., there is just this. It seems like you're on automatic programming to be Catholic for the rest of your life. It's sort of like your firmware that's downloaded. And so I stepped back and I said, I'm just going to check out what else is out there. And believe me, this has something to do with mysteries. So I hope you're not gonna feel cheated at the end. Okay. So I started examining all of the world's religions, right? I started going to these services. I started learning about it. I traveled to a few places, just to see is this something that I connect with? Because I had this very strong desire to connect with meaning, right? I wanted to find something meaningful, powerful, something that was going to capture my heart, my imagination, my creativity, all of those things. And I talked to a couple people, and I forgot who it was. I actually think that it was someone from the Baha'i faith. Shouts out all the Baha'is listening. And for some reason, they said, look, you got to read this book called The Thief in the Night. This book is incredible, right? It's about how there was supposed to be, there was this huge, here's a cover of it. In the 1840s, there was this mania, this absolute certitude that spread among people that the return of Jesus Christ was going to happen, Revelations, end days, was going to happen by the end of the 19th century. And it was, now I think that this newspaper here is probably fake. I hope there will actually be kind of metal if there was a paper called The End Times. But yeah, it was being reported globally. It was just on everybody's mind. Everyone was talking about it, and it sort of evaporated. And so what happened to that? And they just said, look, this is this really powerful text that was really illuminating for me, and I think it might be illuminating for you, and just give it a chance, because it seems like it's not going to be very interesting at first, but it's really going to open your eyes, right? And so I got this, and I found a nice tree at a local park. I rode my bike there, and I really did give it a chance because I was just at this moment where I was very open to everything. And I'm reading this book, and it truly was nothing like I expected it to be. It had this story that it started out with about a thief who is recently fell in love and decided, because of this love with like a sort of aristocratic woman, because of this new love, he wanted to give up this thief life, this thieving, right? Burgling, and says, okay, I'm going to give it up. I guess I'm just going to do one last score because, he has a friend or something that comes and says, come on, you promised me we got to do this. This is a big one. And he says, all right, fine. One more and I'm out. And as he is in the house stealing, I think it's a silver chandelier, which I think gets stolen a lot in literature. Les Mis. Was it chalices in that? I don't remember, but he steals it, and all of a sudden he hears the person whose house it is, and they come downstairs, and this person is he finds out, he hides in the closet, and he sees that this person is this woman who he loves, and it's her house, and he's stealing from her, and he's in the closet, and it's this tremendous moment of tension where he's holding his breath and he's feeling just absolutely miserable about himself and all the choices and how could this happen. And she opens the door and sees him, and her mother shouts down, who is it? What is it? What happened? And the daughter looks at this man, and she turns her head towards his mother, and she says, it's no one. Right? Looks right in this man's eyes and says, it's no one. And I was really, really moved by this. Like, I was tremendously moved. I, for whatever reason, the way that it was written, it sort of occurred to me that this whole time, I had really wanted those candlesticks. I wanted the silver. I wanted to just barge into whatever religion it was, and I wanted to take inspiration, and I wanted to have immediate connection with a creator. And I basically wanted to like level up or power up, and I could have had that close, intimate, personal relationship with the divine. In this case, it would be, like the love of this woman. But instead, I'm just trying like a thief in the night to go in and steal things. And because of that, I can't find God. I'm hiding in my shame. And so I was like, I called this guy and I said, hey man, I got to tell you, like, I read this and it was like really, really powerful. And he says, that's great. I told you it was amazing. And he said, what did you like about it? And I began to explain it, and he just went silent. And he's like, are you joking? And I was like, no, I think it was really powerful. And he's like, I don't really know what you're on about, but let me know when you read it. As you may have already sussed out by now, I did read The Thief in the Night, and I read The Thief in the Night, not by John William Sears. I read it by E.W. Hornung. A Thief in the Night, Further Adventures of A.J. Raffles, Cricketer and Cracksman, which is a collection of short stories published in 1905, which is a part of a long series about the gentleman thief Arthur J. Raffles and his sidekick Bunny. And this was not a religious text. And because it was sold to me in that way, I just pushed all of this meaning into it. I completely infused it with not only a religious meaning, but it actually moved me. It inspired me. And this was, paradoxically, I suppose, ironically, something that was a first step to my having a sort of spiritual connection, reestablishing an actual faith practice and belief system that I have today. But I always think about that because it is such a clear demonstration of our mind's ability to just put meaning into something, to just put that meaning there no matter what it is, to connect those dots, okay? And I think about that all the time because I think that there is some potential there to reimagine what makes a mystery and what makes it satisfying may not, in fact, be the actual promise of an actual logistical, explanatory solution for the mystery, but the promise of it, the certitude that understanding will arrive from this journey that you're going on. Okay, so this is nothing concrete yet, but what it made me think of was this notion of Jung talked about a psychopomp, and a psychopomp is a something that allows a person to contend with their fragmented subconscious mind. Right? There is Freud and Jung, although in a slightly different way, would say we have this disintegrated, literally disintegrated self, all these fractured pieces of self, and the problem that we have in finding meaning is that they are all spread across. They're fragmented. They're not in contact with one another. And so when we are able to piece even two of them together, we are able to understand something new about ourselves. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, the economics of the subconscious, we are usually not able to do this by just like sitting there, unless it's some sort of deep meditation or psychedelic or something like that. Usually there has to be some tool that we use to access that. And very often the arts hold a lot of promise for those tools. And so reading a story about a pig and a spider, right? Charlotte's Web might activate something in you as a psychopomp that makes you think, be able to get in touch with this fragmented part of yourself that feels like it's unable to be proud of itself, or that really wishes it had someone to call a friend or whatever that might be, right? And so a mystery, in a way, creates this potential for an epiphany, because the mystery is this externalized disintegration. And the detective or investigator whom we naturally relate to, right, just by the rules of how we view literature or movies or media, whatever it might be, we are placing ourselves in that situation, and we are watching this person integrate these disparate clues and putting them together for a discovery. And that is, like all good art, an analog for the process that happens within us, right? Which is especially when there are clues that most people would not see as having anything to do with one another, and then a very intrepid investigator is able to see this is how these connect. And our brain, working overtime and undercover in our subconscious, starts doing the same thing and starts wondering, are there these two pieces? These two pieces never seem like they had anything to do with each other. I always loved penguins, and I hate feeling claustrophobic, and I once went tobogganing when I was 6 years old. I don't think those have anything to do with each other, but why am I thinking of all those things right now, right? And we realized that our mom made us ride in the toboggan with too many penguins, and we felt like we didn't have a space of our own, and that's why we're claustrophobic. I really should get into therapy. Okay, so that's getting a little bit, I would say, a little bit deeper here. And I think that's sufficient. That's sufficient for our purposes in terms of what makes a mystery. And so we can see then in tabletop RPGs, probably in terms of group play, most of that is possible on some level, right? You're going to be able to engage with the mystery. You're going to be able to find clues. These clues are going to gradually reveal themselves. They're sometimes not going to seem connected, but it's the GM. It's the GM knows the value of clues, okay? And they know which clues mean something and which ones are distractors. And more than the main problem of knowing the solution, the sub problem in solo mystery RPGs is there is no way to place value, relative value on clues. And so that's to say you could make a mystery in which your character finds a bunch of clues and then you're able to put those clues together and solve the case. But the problem with that is not all clues in a real investigation, a fictional mystery, whatever, not all clues are relevant, right? Things happen all the time that are irrelevant, all right? Like today, when I came outside, a car was parked too close to the back of my car. And I see that as just somebody, I to be honest, I saw it as someone being a jerk, which I know the better me knows that it's probably not something someone was trying to do. But I saw it, I groaned, I dismissed it, I drove away. But if I would have been investigating something or I've been paranoid about something, then I go down a very different path, right? Because I start to say, oh, someone's trying to box me in. Someone doesn't want me to leave here. Someone's trying to cover up my license plates. You know, could be a variety of things, but in reality, it's meaningless. And this is sort of the problem is if we go either way on that, it's a problem. So if we're playing a solo mystery RPG and we get clues and we say, okay, everything is valuable, everything is meaningful, well, it's going to feel very trite. It's going to feel very, it's not going to be grounded, right? Because what it's going to feel like is just an investigator that no matter what they do, they can't help but just hap on to key pieces of evidence over and over again. Everyone they talk to is the right person. Everything they do is the right thing. Every magnifying glass they put in front of their face shows them fingerprints, right? And so that's just not going to feel very satisfying because it almost feels like it's like Theodore Roosevelt when he went hunting and have people shoot behind him. Like that just could not be satisfying because it's like, oh yeah, I was probably the one that shot the deer or the lion or whatever majestic beasts he was hunting. And I think it's the same feeling there, that if you're someone who truly craves a mystery, then you're almost feeling like, well, I'm not really solving anything here because everything is just like whatever I think it is, et cetera, et cetera. All right. So on the other end of that, if you say, okay, well, I'm going to be the one, if I solo play, I'll be the one that parses out what's relevant and what's not. The problem with that then is you don't know. If you truly don't know the solution to the case, how are you supposed to determine what's relevant, right? If somebody says, yeah, I saw somebody on the balcony the other day, they were looking pretty weird, and I say, I don't think that's relevant. What if it was? What if the case at the end turns out that guy was some dude who was standing on a balcony trying to, watch the security, patterns or whatever so that they can do a break-in into the museum and steal the precious artifact? We don't know. Okay. Yes, I understand that I'm over-explaining something that is probably pretty intuitive, which is like the problem of solo mystery. But there have been attempts, and I'll say some better than others, some quite valiant attempts to square this circle in terms of what makes a good mystery. So one that I really like, of course, is the Thousand Empty Light, which isn't perfectly a mystery. This is by Alfred Valley. You can find a playthrough of this. I also did a narration of this for Alfred. this has all of the trappings of a mystery, but it's more of an existential mystery. I would even argue that it is sort of cosmic horror, in that we don't necessarily find out everything at the end where we would say, oh, that's what's been going on, that's what happens. We're kind of left with that mystery. And for that reason, it is a form of mystery and it's outstanding, but the problems with it are, well, it's not problems, but the reasons why it doesn't quite perfectly fit into what we're looking for is, number one, you can really only play it once, right? Because it's actually, it has like random generators, including the combined system semiotic standard, which is the greatest oracle of all time. But it's narrative. So it has a story. There are 6 rooms and 6 stories of that. And so once you read that once, you could play it again, but, it's about the same satisfaction of playing a video game again that you really like. Some people really like doing that. Some people are like, I've seen it once, I'm done. So not quite, but that, I think this is a good, attempt. There is such rolling thunder right now. What an awesome... I don't even have to pay for these sound effects. They're free. Okay. Spiralis, this is one that I accidentally put down in water about 3 minutes after I bought it, and I will never forgive myself. This is, again, more of like there's an investigator, but it's more about creating a mood. And then the mystery is, again, you have a GM here that will be able to like help the players approach the mystery. And it is more about corruption and sanity and stuff like that, which I think is another approach to this, is using those factors of a person's perception to obstruct or obfuscate certain things so that they lack certain information, and then surprising things happen. Liminal horror investigators, another one. We talked about Tiny Cthulhu. Under Ashen Skies, which I am so sad, I pulled this out of the shelf and I put it in so that the cover was folded like this in my bookshelf. It has this crease now, and I'm so mad. But this is from the great Alex T. Across 1,000 Dead Worlds. Such an interesting game here. You sort of wake up in this town called Riverside. Riverside, Virginia. And you used to be from there, but your memory's off, and you can't quite piece things together. And it is a mystery, and there's lots of amazing tools in here, and there's some narrative components, some things that you can't experience for the first time twice. But I think you probably don't need those to play. And I think if you're playing this game, they're very cool. But the mystery is not necessarily like a crime or a specific a case. It's more like you're trying to figure out what you're doing there. And I actually think that in terms of solo play, this is at least half of the scratching of the itch that we want. This guy's back. Come on, Maurice. Every time I make a video, man. Why? You gotta find a place of your own. Talk about a mystery. Okay. Yeah, I think this scratches half of the itch. And that half of the itch is wanting to put things together. Come on, buddy. And discover things, right? You want to use disparate pieces of data and sort of zero in on something that ultimately unveils itself. And that thing could be new every time. And that thing is actually like, what's going on here, right? What's going on in this place? And yes, other mysteries can come up in between those times, but the bigger mystery is that thing. The half of the itch that it's missing, I would say, I don't know if we could do anything about this. And that's the sort of like, classically, there is the satisfaction of reaching the objective from traveling through the subjective. So that's to say, like, as the detective subjectively takes in observations and interviews people and gets evidence and other people's impressions and then their own impressions and analysis, you have all these subjective things, and there are a big batch of them that we keep whittling down. And even if we can't figure it out, we know objectively there is a truth out there, right? So if someone stole my motorboat and I could investigate this for years and I never figured out, the fact still remains that there is some objective person that stole my motorboat, right? Me solving that doesn't summon that person. That is objectively already something that happened. Is that part of the satisfaction of mysteries? I don't know, but I think this is probably on the right track. And what activated me in this larger investigation is not actually a tabletop role-playing game, but in fact a video game, which is Disco Elysium. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I also want to say that I was able to play through Under Ashen Skies, and it was this that showed me something relatively new in terms of solo games and solving a mystery. And then I did see the DNA of Disco Elysium in this as well. But just as sort of a launching point before we focus specifically on how we might do a solo mystery RPG, I want to just kind of review a little bit what other games have attempted. So I talked about, there was the one of like using clues as a scavenger hunt, right? So for instance, in Tiny Cthulhu, you have these gradual clues that get clearer and clearer of what's happening, but in reality, it doesn't matter if they're clear or not, because all that they have to do is you have to collect a certain amount of them to move up to the next level and then get a new piece of information. Now, this is not a solo game. This would be used for a GM, but this is a system that you might see in other games. An example of this that I think is quite good, but definitely does employ a system similar to this is Free League's Solo Rules for Vaesen. This does have some interesting stuff. It's very journaling heavy, and it attempts to do the valuation of different clues through playing cards, like asking if something is positive or negative or meaningful or not. And it is a bit interesting to randomize that, although I do think sometimes it leaves like some information on the cutting room floor. But this supplement, which is available on Drive-Thru, and it is actually Free League supplement, this is official. It provides a really good cheat sheet here of how you go through each day, and it's used in concert with the Vaesen core book, and I think it's pretty darn good in terms of adapting Vaesen to the solo thing. Vaesen a little bit, I'm not going to say cheats, it's definitely not cheating, but given how Vaesen is set up, the answer to the mysteries are usually one of the Vaesen, right? The whole thing that you're trying to figure out is like which of these Vaesen is responsible for these misdeeds or this troublemaking, right? And each of these different Vaesens have different sorts of behaviors that they do. And so as you go through and talk to the NPCs, there's a little table here to change the direction of the mystery, keywords to generate random scenes, but ultimately you start gathering these clues. And then this table right here, there's 3 of these tables. It kind of shows like clue 1, if your clue 1 is that people are disappearing, and then your clue 2 is that forest workers are getting hurt, and your clue 3 is a mysterious disease is spreading, it's probably going to be the Vaesen called Ash Tree Wife. And I'm sorry about spoiler on that. Don't read this if you're interested in playing. But the second and third tables function very similarly in that after you gather clues, eventually you'll be able to put those clues together and sort of like match them up. And there is a limited data set of how many outcomes there can be, because there is like a total number of Vaesen. I don't know if it's 36 or 40 or 500. I don't know. But ultimately, the possibilities are functionally limited, right? And that doesn't mean it's not enjoyable, but in a way, I feel that could fall into, and when I did play this solo, I felt it was a little bit like Guess Who. I still enjoyed it because just the feeling of moving through the investigation felt really cool, but ultimately it starts to have this feeling of a little bit of tedium where you're going, okay, here's what I know, and I just have to figure out like which of these fits. And I think as I've been trying to develop my own solo mystery RPG, that is the real threat here, is creating a situation that the possibilities or possible outcomes are so limited that it starts to feel like a board game, or that you're working too much in like resource management or something like that. Okay. So, like I said, it was playing Disco Elysium, which if you haven't played this game, you really should. It's on Steam. If you get it from, it's usually like $40 on Xbox, PlayStation, Steam. But there is a game service called GOG, G-O-G. Go to GOG.com. And I didn't think this place was legit, but you could read reviews yourself. I've been using it for a while. And that the game is actually, I think, $9 or $10 on there right now. So if you're interested in playing that, it is definitely worth it. I played it some years ago, and I kind of tossed it because I just wasn't in a place where I wanted a video game that was too similar to tabletop. But now I am most definitely ready for that. And what I have found is a game that is meaningful, powerful, touching, hilarious, intellectually stimulating. It's not much of a story in terms of, the story isn't genius or anything. It's just the environment, the people are so real and lived in, and it's basically you're a detective who's drunk, and you drink so much that you have amnesia, probably like Wernicke-Korsakoff encephalopathy, and this provides a really good engine to allow for very descriptive exposition. It's a very clever trick in that because this detective has lost all their memory, they ask questions that would otherwise seem preposterous, such as like, hey, what's the capital of this country we're in? What's the date? Can you tell me about the history of this city? Things like that. And because of that memory lapse, you're able to have that offered to you without it feeling like very, when exposition seems totally out of place and you're like, this isn't how people talk. Like people aren't like, good morning. Did you know that this ginseng tree was planted here 99 years ago? And it's you and a partner, Kim Kurosagi, are moving around trying to figure out a murder that happened. There is no combat in the game, or as far as like combat, it's really like single dice rolls, but there is a huge assortment of skills that are called muses, and instead of in addition to also deciding like modifiers for dice rolls, these skills actually speak to you throughout the game. And so your volition might tell you to keep pushing yourself, and then your electrochemistry might say, no, we need a drink. And all of these parts of you, your intuition, your regret, they're all sort of popping up into your subconscious mind, and in real time informing and affecting the decisions that you make. And I have done a deep dive on this game simply because I'm so fascinated by it. And the game and the narrative of this game is something that I think it said something like 100,000 words, thousands and thousands of hours, 5 years that they spent writing it to make it all come together perfectly. Now, I would love to make a solo RPG for all of you that I spend 5 years making and write out every single possible scenario. But not only am I not going to be able to make that, just based on my own resources and time, but it's also kind of not what we're looking for in solo RPG, right? We want the ability to summon some sort of adventure, and have it be novel and have it be infused with both our creativity as well as these random inputs from Oracle, so that we have something completely unique and novel every time that we play. And so Disco Elysium, playing this though, it was, I don't want to call it a breakthrough necessarily, but it was the first thing that made me think about what made it such a good mystery. What is it that I am so invested in finding out who committed this murder? Again, it's the people, it's the places, it's the relationships, it's the dialogue. Okay. And so one obvious solution that emerges from that would be to do the kind of the solo, what do we call this? Like the solo Mississippi boat ride, right? This is the usual thing we do with solo games, is that we reverse engineer. Okay, we say, let me find my little sheet to show you. Actually, scratch that. We don't reverse engineer. That's what is done in the normal tabletop, right? They start with the solution or the answer of the case, and then they reverse engineer these clues to build up to the case. In solo gaming, what we like to do is reverse engineer. Rather than saying, here's the solution, now let's figure out the clues, we say, okay, well, we'll generate the clues, and then all those clues will converge at this outcome that we will then consider to be the solution. Again, as I mentioned, the problem with that is we could feel as though we didn't solve anything, but instead we just wrote something. So that's the problem that I think makes it not fully satisfying, is that this solo setup of converging rather than diverging, this leads us to the somewhat interesting, somewhat enjoyable process of writing a mystery, but it does not allow us to enter into a mystery, okay? Actually play a mystery, enjoy a mystery. That tension is not necessarily there. I guess there's some tension to be like, wow, what if I don't create a good enough, reason for all these clues? But I think it's you know it when you see it, or if you hear if you're picking up what I'm putting down right now, it's just not the same feeling. If we want to create the solution in advance, that is a possibility, right? Is that we do that, but then we're just going to feel as though we're sort of bringing something into being that was there all along. And so if we say, okay, well, I'm going to say that it was the art critic themselves who did the murder. And then I play the game and I'm talking to people at this cocktail party, these hoity-toity artists, and one of them says, oh, that art critic is such a wonderful man. That does nothing for me because I know that art critic killed them. So once again, it's the fundamental solo mystery problem of like, I can't both know and not know something. And that's going to inform what I do, the information that I do. I'm probably going to go right to that art critic at the beginning and question them for 4 hours. So that's no good. And then we have the reverse engineer. We allow the solution to come on its own. I don't think either of those work, at least not perfectly. And I think under Ashen Skies, as well as Disco Elysium, as well as one other game that I want to mention, which is Citizen Sleeper, which is another fantastic game in terms of these narrative gameplay. And I don't know if, I'm not saying that this is my theory that I want to advance and that I'm correct and that nobody else could possibly be as right as me. But here's what I've come up with. And this is a good 2 hours and 12 minutes of thinking that Man Alone put into this. I think the way in which we can create a solo RPG in which we both enjoy the process of the case gradually unfolding, but then also have the satisfaction of discovering something, is by creating a game in which the player and the player character are solving two different cases. Okay? Just let that sit. Pause this video for a second and think about that for 6 to 9 hours, and then come back to this, okay? The character and the player character and the player character and the player are solving two different cases. The player character is solving this case that we are generating as we go along, right? And I have some ideas of how to do that, right? I'm thinking what I'm doing in my game is I'm putting 3 active cases, and at the end of the day, you could sort of rank your evidence in terms of how much it aligns to one of these. And if it's like something else, you could either start a new case or you can just kind of throw that evidence out. We can figure out some mechanical way to take care of that. I also borrow the memory thing in my game in that I have somebody who kind of goes into cryo sleep and then wakes up to an erased memory and has to complete these investigations every few years. They lose track of time, and so that allows for the narrative exposition and the very, beginner's mind every time I wake up to ask questions about government and history and all those kind of things. And so I'm working through these cases as best as I can before I'm cryogenically memory wiped and frozen again. And that's what my player character is doing. But what I am doing is I am trying to figure out what is wrong with this city. And I'm also trying to figure out what happened to my character. Why would they have chosen to go into this line of work, right? That is something that I can work on that case while my character is working through their own cases, because those clues will begin to reveal themselves in oblique ways that really will make me feel like a detective, right? I can go with some pre-generated case, but now I'm paying attention to what makes my character feel sad to hear, what makes them shudder, what scent comes along that causes them to have some sort of memory. Let me roll that memory. What was that? It's a very brief memory. They're running through a field. They're 4 years old, whatever it is. And as I go through these cycles of solving these crimes, my character gradually reveals themselves, because even though they don't have memory, they don't have like a working memory, they are still themselves. And this is, as a side note, something that I am fascinated by on sort of a personal level. I once saw somebody have a procedure done, and before it was a routine procedure, like an endoscopy. I think they put a camera down someone's throat to see if they had an ulcer. And before the endoscopy, this person said, the nurse said, this might be a little uncomfortable, but you'll be twilighted or whatever it is, so don't worry about it. And this person was like an ex-Marine, and they say, I'm not going to worry about it. I've seen much worse things in, this operation or whatever. And they did the anesthesia, and then they put the camera into this guy. I'm sorry to be a little graphic. I don't mean to gross anyone out. I've had this procedure done. It's pretty, it starts and finishes. You don't even know what happened. So, and this man is making these horrible sounds, these sounds of swallowing a camera on a wire, right? And it's these very like gagging sounds and these sort of struggling sounds. And then they pull the camera out several minutes later, the anesthesia wears off, and this man says, oh, is that it? That was no problem. Like, I told you guys, it was no problem. And I remember being struck by this thought of like, does pain matter if we don't remember it? Is there something that pain did to that man? Is there something, the pain that we endure when we are incapacitated, when we're so young that we can't formulate memories, when we're drunk, when we're asleep, are this pain that happens to us that we don't have any record of, does it affect anything? And that's what I'm interested in my character revealing. And I'll be able to determine what is valuable information and what isn't, because I'll be getting to know my character. I'll be starting to understand them. And yes, this is, perfectly going to create that ideal solo RPG situation in which we are creating and perceiving at the same time. We are directing our own dream and sitting in the theater watching it, okay? Will this work? I don't know, but I'm definitely going to work on this game. I'm definitely going to be talking about this nonstop. So if you've enjoyed this video, I once again would like to recommend that you get even more weekly prattling. I am going to, just to manage, do some work-life balance. My job is becoming quite busy, so my schedule will now be usually just making one of these videos every week, as well as one podcast. So if you want a double dose of more conversation like this and general tomfoolery, go ahead and join. Again, it's only $4. We have a good time. Yeah, what a weird thing to do, but this is a mystery, and nobody knows why I'm just going to end the video right